Coming to that interview, we promised you the ANC's Gauteng Integrity Committee, or the PIC, last week announced that its findings on some of the investigations before it. Now, the investigations followed media reports and a public outcry against grave corruption allegations in the awarding of personal protective equipment, or PPE, tenders. And some of the resolutions were to ask Merafong Mayor Maphefo Mogale-Letsie and former West Rand District Municipality Mayor Boyce Maneli, who also serves as ANC MP and chairperson of the Communications Portfolio Committee in Parliament, to step down from their positions. Now, the PIC found both negligent of preventing corruption related to the VBS Mutual Bank saga, and the committee is yet to provide its further findings on Gauteng ANC members. But to discuss this further, we're joined by the Gauteng ANC Provincial Secretary, Khawe. Thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you for having us, and greetings to the viewers.
Mr. Khawe, let's start with an update on the Provincial Integrity Committee's investigations into the PPE tenders.
The PIC is currently interviewing various officials of government, particularly at health, just to have a sense of what could have happened. And it has already comrades, the 3 comrades, and they will appear again next week. And they are trying to reach to meet the target given to them by the PC that they must conclude by the 3rd of September.
So how many cases in total have been brought before you, and how many have you resolved at this stage?
Come again?
How many cases in total have been brought before you?
The case is brought before us?
Yes.
If I understood the question, for now we're dealing with the 3, specifically on the PPEs, and we also expecting the provincial government to conclude its investigation on number of companies identified and to see whether in those companies we have ANC leaders who may be implicated in wrongdoing, and we will take a decision after that report.
So how much time are you giving yourself for that particular exercise, given that it has been ventilated in the public domain for quite some time now?
Yes, of course, but we're also moving from the conference in where we mandated ourselves to rebuild the image of the organ, its integrity, and ensure that we commit in renewal. And in action, it means we've got to take action where there are allegations against our members.
So what would that action entail when there are allegations against your members? Because just looking at how you dealt with those implicated in the VBS Mutual saga and the Gauteng PPE tender scandal, give us a sense of exactly what that means.
It means a commitment, a commitment to renew the ANC. For some time now, trust deficit has been the biggest problem of the movement. For a longer time now, we have been unable to separate allegations from facts and or not acting in other aspects, relying much on the law enforcement agencies. And we have made a commitment, pardon me, that besides natural justice, there's also an issue of integrity, and there's also an issue of a process of renewal. And therefore, we are committing ourselves, our members, our leaders, into a program of action where there are allegations raised, would prefer that members step aside a bit and that we act decisively. And we are continuing engaging the law enforcement agencies in an attempt to ensure that they speed up cases before them. And this would actually provide individuals and the ANC and the public clarity they need, whether it is an allegation or it is factual. And therefore, it's a combination of work, internal process, self-correction and on the law enforcement agencies, which unfortunately at times they take too long to resolve some of the cases.
So speaking to that, in terms of your engagement, as you say, with law enforcement authorities, what have you engaged them on? Which cases are you looking at them to follow up on, and which ones are they taking too long on?
You would know that we, at some point, there's a PEC. This PEC 2019 took a decision to ask Comrade Brian Hlongwa to step aside and waiting for the law enforcement agencies to act or to clear him, and that has not been happening. And therefore, such a case and many other cases that are not concluded do not create a good environment for either the party or the individual to come to a public and say, indeed, there is an allegation, it's proven, or the and therefore a member must come back and do organizational activities. So we are aware even these cases of PPEs should get necessary attention and speed, and then it will either clear or confirm and we move on.
So when these allegations of impropriety, of fraud and corruption are lingering over members of the ANC in Gauteng, what duty do you have as an organizational leadership structure to actually make sure that the organization remains above reproach? Because looking at some of the cases that you mentioned, looking at some of your cadres that are implicated here, will they actually pass through the eye of the needle as per the ANC's own definition of what their cadre should look like?
They have already been demonstrated some level of quality, and that's why we had deployed some of them in various positions. But when you act in a position and your obligations, the ANC gives you an opportunity to clear yourself. And that process in itself, it's a moment of self-reflection. It intends to self-correct. And then it also helps the ANC to see that perhaps their deployment may have missed one or two. But I can say that many of our members now in the organization, and Gauteng in particular, know that they got to act in a manner that represent values of the organization, far more representing their personal interests. So I'm confident that in Gauteng we are doing well and we will continue. It's not a one-day event, but it's a process of engagement. And that's why even yesterday we have resolved to convene a seminars with all public representatives in our province to understand the implications of oversight and political accountability, effectively ensuring that we behave in a manner from public representatives of the ANC. So we are embarking on a process ourselves, and we think at some point it would just be automatic that members and leaders of the organization know what is required from them.
Well, one would imagine that they would know that already, Mr. Khawe. If you look at the PIC clearing Jeff Makubo, for example, of any wrongdoing, again, how do you arrive at that conclusion, looking at his actual allegation, the allegation that is put against him in those dealings with regiments? How do you arrive at that conclusion, and how does the ANC get to the point where they say this is acceptable and the public should be okay with it?
And then the basic investigation and issue was the conflict of interest and his role in the awarding of a contract, which the PIC has looked at the matter and found that he was not a councillor at the time. And when he became a councillor, he resigned and declared his interest. And therefore, the charge is found not to be real, because the media and the former mayor would have made an allegation that, no, he participated or he influenced the process. So it is our view that when you're not in the a position of authority and you are an ordinary citizen who's involved in business, you may not have direct access to such decisions and meetings. And therefore, we accepted the work of the PIC. Remember, it's not everybody accused who will be found guilty, and that's why there's a process. And the ANC is quite satisfied with the investigation done by the PIC.
So what is the ANC's view on facilitation payments, Mr. Khawe?
Come again?
What is the ANC's view on facilitation payments? Do you consider that to be an act of corruption?
As I said, that the charge against Jeff Makhubo was his involvement or conflict of interest in participating in a process which the PIC has cleared him not participating in the process.
I'm asking about facilitation payments because you would appreciate that that is a question that goes way beyond just Jeff Makhubo. So what is your view on facilitation payments? Does the ANC consider that an act of corruption?
The ANC would never support anybody who goes around doing money laundering, selling tenders, and getting money in exchange of influence, of power, authority. So certainly we would not do that. And if there's a further evidence on the financials, and we will look at that. But from where we are satisfied with what we'd asked the PIC to deal with.
Yes, but Mr. Makhubo did not deny receiving the payments from regiments. So what did you consider those payments to be? Were they not facilitation payments?
As I said, that there is a declaration with the Johannesburg Metro, his role when he was not in the Johannesburg leadership, when he was just an ordinary man from a partnership. But what we're more looking at is what role did he play when we had appointed him as the MMC of finance, and to what extent did he participate in tendering, not before we appointed him. And I want to say to the people of Gauteng, that has been cleared by the PI, that when you are appointed into a position of power, to do or act in a manner that suggests corruption, and we are satisfied that he did not.
And how do you respond to those who say that you are very contradictory in how you handle certain matters that are brought before you, depending, of course, on the proximity to power of those who are implicated?
Not really. When you engage in discussion of self-correct, cleaning yourself, look at who is charged, you look at what are you charged of, you look at the implications of the case, and you look at the real nature and of the case, not much on proximity or your name and surname. So we have been consistent in dealing with issues from public and subjecting them to PIC, and from PIC, PEC takes a decision. And I want to believe that we are honestly and consistently dealing with this matter. There may be perception, this one and that one, but factually we know that we have reached a level of ourselves building an integrity and acting in a manner that convinces ANC members and the communities of Gauteng that the ANC is really committed in cleaning itself where there is a need, and in ensuring that we fight corruption whenever it raises its head.
Final question. So with regard to the VBS matter and those who were implicated and asked to step aside, what further action will be taken considering the gravity of the VBS saga and its impact on communities?
The first action has already been taken. They have been asked to step aside. The second action is to remove them from the list of public representatives, because we think that they've acted in a manner that doesn't really represent the integrity of the ANC. we have also charged them with the responsibility of apologizing to the communities of West Rand and Merafong in particular, and we will be following up on that. And ourselves, we will go to Merafong and have an engagement with the communities to ensure that we restore the municipality and ensure that we provide necessary services for the community of Merafong and West Rand in particular. So there is action taken, but we ourselves as an organization, we will go to Merafong to ensure that the communities do get the services that they must get.
Well, let's leave it there. Thank you so much, Gauteng ANC Provincial Secretary Jacob Khawe, for discussing the work of the Provincial Integrity Committee process regarding its investigation on PPE tenders and other matters before the committee. And we'll be in conversation taking this further, talking about ethics and the law, and particularly how this plays out in the public domain. We'll be in conversation with Advocate Vusi Pikoli and Eusebius Mkhizer. But let's just quickly get a news update before